Kubernetes, would I pass the class?
Yes.
I think there are units in that class that I would be able to pass pretty well, and there are units in that class that I would not do it all well in. I think it's a testament to Kubernetes that there are areas that I don't ever have to think about. There are whole things that it works reliably. I don't have to care about it. And I have taken my own advice and chased the areas of it that were interesting to me and exciting to me, and learned more, and learned perhaps way more than I should about those areas. But yeah, I think there are areas of Kubernetes that I know a lot about, and areas of Kubernetes that I know almost nothing about. For better or worse.
And turning the question again, let's say you are the professor and working on the university, and this course is let's say the HOD or the senior teacher asks you to deliver this course and I'll talk to people so they can learn the Kubernetes. Do you take the challenge?
Probably not. I don't know if I consider myself a knowledgeable enough person to teach a class. Again, there are areas I think I could talk about at length for hours and hours and hours, whether or not anybody cares. But I think I don't think I have you need like both breadth and depth of the knowledge to be able to teach it to people. And I have some breadth and some depth, but no full knowledge of everything. I don't think anybody does, right? I don't think anybody about Kubernetes or computers or anything, life, nobody knows everything. So, yeah, I think I would probably turn down the teaching position on Kubernetes as a degree or whatever.
Yes, absolutely. And for the last, just describe Shipwright in just 3 or 4 words. Let's say if somebody asks 3 or 4 words, what is Shipwright and what problem you try to solve?
Shipwright, it's going to be more than 3. Build images declaratively is, I think, my 3 words.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Great description. Great description. Thank you, Jason. It's been a wonderful. Thanks everyone for joining us today. And today we are talking about the Shipwright. It's been another movement that is recently been populating up in the Continuous Delivery Foundation, the CNCF landscape, because all of the guys we are treating Kubernetes YAML as kind of a declarative stuff before, and we don't have this kind of leverage to build the container in a Kubernetes way. And thankfully, with the teams who are working heavily on these kind of tools, so you can build containers in Kubernetes as you would build as some other stuff like a replica set or deployments or the stateful set or clone jobs. So today I'm joined by Jason Hall. He's an active member of the Shipwright, done a lot of work, tektoncd, KCP, software engineer at Red Hat. There are so many things he can travel around the world talking about the container stuff. Thank you very much for joining me. Jason, introduce yourself to my community, to my audience.
Sure. I mean, that was a pretty good intro already. Hi, my name is Jason. I work at Red Hat on a number of things, Tekton, Shipwright, KCP. I am on the Continuous Delivery Foundation, TOC, and a governing board member representing Red Hat. Prior to Red Hat, I worked at Google for a while. I helped start the Tekton project and worked on the Cloud Build product that they have there. Yeah, and I'm excited to talk about Shipwright and any other thing related to it that comes up. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you for joining me, first of all, for me on this episode. Let's first talk about how your KubeCon goes. KubeCon only recently ended. What's your takeaway from this conference?
Yeah, KubeCon was really fun. It was fun to be back at a live in-person conference. It was, I'll be honest, mildly scary, but just because everything. But it felt very safe. It was very good. It was very nice to get back to it. I'm looking forward to more and more and more of them over time, and meeting more of the folks that I mostly just interact with on the internet. It was lovely seeing some people in real life. I gave a talk about how sort of a very core functionality of Tekton, a few of them, how they work, with Alex Collins, who works on Argo workflows. And yeah, I think it was well received. There were a bunch of people in the audience, got some good questions, got some good feedback about it. But basically, Tekton and Argo workflows both run on top of Kubernetes and do a kind of fundamentally similar thing: run this and then run this and then run this. And in order to do that, we've had to come up with a bunch of really gross, terrible hacks to be able to get any of that to work. And so it was a bit of a, I would say the talk was kind of part bragging about how terrible of the hacks we've been able to come up with, and then part like, oh no, things don't work sometimes because of the terrible hacks we've had to come up with. So it was a fun talk. It was I enjoyed. I always enjoy bragging about my hacks, so it was a good talk, and yeah, look forward to having more opportunities to meet people in person and talk about this stuff. So
Yes, absolutely. And if you already missed those talks, and these talks would be available on our YouTube channel, grab the link. I think you would enjoy that stuff as well. Because Jason is active member, ton of talks on CDF foundations. CDCon already did a talk on Shipwright and a bunch of stuff.
yeah.
So I think he's a wonderful person for me to talk about this Kubernetes native way of building container images. So let's first talk about how Shipwright came into being and how long it's been into the CDF foundation.
Yeah, so Shipwright actually predates my time at Red Hat. When Shipwright is so far mainly a project between Red Hat folks and IBM folks, though anybody is welcome to contribute. Anybody's welcome to use it. It's not it's not just ours, but the Red Hat folks and IBM folks started working on it before I worked at Red Hat. I was at Google at the time, and I think they came and demoed something at a Tekton working group one time and just said, hey, we're building something on top of Tekton and it does this and it's cool. And then when I joined Red Hat, I got more involved with the project and the community, and it really sort of is a really cool project and a really interesting area. I'm sure we'll talk about it more. But and then since joining Red Hat, Red Hat joined the Continuous Delivery Foundation as a member, and we wanted to donate this project to CDF because, like I said, it's not Red Hat's project, it's not IBM's project. It's kind of like everybody should be able to have this. That's kind of the lovely thing about foundations in general. And being built on top of Tekton, I'm sure we'll talk about that more as well. Being built on top of Tekton and doing, continuous creation of images, continuous delivery of those container images, CDF was a natural home for it. So we donated Shipwright in July, I think, or something like that, something along those lines, and presented a couple of talks. Myself and Adam Kaplan and Shubik gave talks at CDCon over the summer, sort of describing how Shipwright works, what it's useful for. Which I'm sure we'll talk about now.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's July of 2021 when you announced this project to the CDF Foundation. And then everybody's take a look at what it is and what its problem is trying to solve. And the problem it tried to solve is kind of interesting, really, because I think it's work around the four area, like what, the source code, and then you have the when part, when to build the images, then the how part, how to build the images, then I think the invocation part is also in this Shipwright. So I think before the invention of Shipwright, there is no library because I have to clone the repo and then I build the images and then I deploy to the registry of somewhere like Quay on Red Hat or GitHub registry or container registry, Docker registry or somebody else. So I think the Shipwright is right now the package of all three construct. So let's talk about these three construct about building images, pushing the images, and invocation of these images.
Yeah. So I think the real sort of um, core nice thing that Shipwright gives you is a declarative CD flow. It is intentionally very simple. It's intentionally very direct. It's not. It is pluggable in a lot of ways, but it's not intended to be something that is, going to stage your rollouts and do things like that. It's really just solving sort of a small focused area of the pipeline. Um, a brief aside into declarative versus imperative. Tekton, I'm obviously biased, but I think Tekton is really great. But Tekton's model is a bit more imperative. It's a bit more do A, then B, then C. Sometimes do A and B at the same time, and then when those are done, do D or whatever. And so you end up writing, kind of like writing code. You write, if X, then Y, and then do this, and then this, and then this. That's imperative. And there are benefits to that. It's obviously, all of the code, most of the code that is written today is imperative. Declarative is a bit more, I want the world to look like this, and it's up to you to make it that way, right? That's how you describe a deployment. You don't say like roll it out to node A, B, and C. You don't say, roll one copy to this one and then another copy to this one. You're not writing code to do that. You're just saying, hey, Kubernetes, I want 10 replicas of this. It's up to you how that works. I don't care. Like, let me know how it's going. Let me know if it's broken and I need to fix it. But like mainly I tell you what to do and you just do it however you want. That's more declarative. And that's more how Shipwright operates, where you just say, Shipwright, I declare my intention that I want this source to be built into this image. This source on github.com/my/repo, and I want you to build the image at docker.io/my user, my image or whatever. And then the intention is you hand that declaration over to Shipwright, and Shipwright just says, got it. Anytime we see that repo change, we will do the work to make an image. And if a repo changes again, we'll do some more work and build another image. And in that way, there are a couple benefits to that. One is it's a lot simpler to specify input and output, and for the user to specify input and output and not really care about how it gets there, not have to care how it gets there. And the other is that if you just declare the input and the output, or your preferred state, your ideal end state, then we can change how we get there without breaking your workflow. If you tell us A has to be done before B has to be done before C, we can't really do anything. We can't change that without breaking breaking the promise we gave you. But if you say, I just want C to happen, we can do A and then B and then C. We can do B and then A and then C. We can do X and Y and Z and then C, just so long as we end up with C. So Shipwright's model is more declarative and more sort of, you tell us what you want and we'll take care of it. At the same time, it's also very pluggable. So Shipwright has a concept of build strategies where you can say, not only here is my source and here's where I want the image to go, but I want you to use the build pack strategy to get there, and I want you to use the Docker file build strategy to get there, build a strategy or S2I, or there are a number of it's 2021. There are a number of ways to get images built these days, but it's still it sort of starts to blur the line between imperative and declarative, because now you told us how you want to get from A to B, but I think it's still a useful, so that the definition of the build pack strategy can change over time to put in some new best practice, or take advantage of caching, or take advantage of some other speed up, and your declarative flow from source to image doesn't have to change for us to satisfy that. So I have forgotten what the question was, but I am hopefully I have answered it.
Yes, absolutely. I think what the whole idea is about, because we are lacking the declarative way of building the container images on top of Kubernetes.
Yeah.
And the declarative way, as you described wonderfully, And what tend to think about, let's say you are in the main of the city and you take a lift from somebody else and you ask him that you take a left and then right and then go to the street number
Yeah.
7 and inside the house number of PD95 and then drop me over there. That's the kind of
Yeah.
imperative way. But then you book a, let's say, car on Uber or Kareem or somebody else. You ask, this is, you can pick from me from, let's say, from Rawalpindi and then go to the Seattle or somebody else's place. So you haven't specified and mentioned how to do it. So that's a declarative way. And we built Kubernetes every resource in a declarative way, like deployment, the stateful cert, the cron job. We won't tell Kubernetes how to do it. It's a job of Kubernetes to make it to the desired state. But we're lacking for the images part of the container building part because we are imperatively cloning the code, imperatively building the code, imperatively pushing the code, and then all things happen. And then these pipelines are also doing this kind of stuff. So that's packages right now by the Shipwright, where you can they can clone your code, build the images, push the images into the registry, and that's the whole point of one package. And when I see from the build strategies that you mentioned, I think it's a builder, Kaneko, KO, and image to source. That is really new to me. So tell us about image to source because I haven't understand what it is.
Yeah. First of all, I really like that analogy, and I will probably use it because that is a very, very good one, right? Like, I don't care how you get me to this place; just get me to this place. I'm not, you're the driver. You know how to get there. Yeah. So I'm gonna borrow that. I will cite my source if I do. The question was about S2I, source to image.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So it's funny that you mentioned that one. That one is, of all of the build strategies, the one I know the least about, the one I have used the least. It's a strategy. It's in the name. It's an alternative to Docker files, where again Docker files are pretty imperative. You say run this, copy this, like set this, do this thing, and the order of them very much matters. With S2I, you don't need to write a Docker file. You don't declare that way. You just say, here's my source. Use this image, use this builder image to produce my final built image. So it's again sort of a natural fit for the declarative world that we are all trying to live in. But I probably won't have much more useful information than that on the specific topic of S2I. But yeah, and there are a number of other. There are at least two ways to think about building an image. One is like assuming a Docker file. That's Docker build uses Docker files, Kaneko uses Docker files, Builda uses Docker files. And then there are a number of sort of non-Docker file ways, build packs, S2I, I'm sure there are others. But those are sort of more like just taking my source, figure out, it's a bit more declarative, or it can be a bit more declarative because you just say, here's my source, make an image. Yeah, I should mention also, so Shipwright is not the first thing to do this. It's not the only thing to have sort of a declarative model. It is in some ways based a lot on OpenShift builds. OpenShift has had Red Hat's container platform. OpenShift has had a build component for a number of years, but it's been sort of locked into OpenShift. It's only available on OpenShift, and it's very difficult to extract that out of OpenShift and put it onto any cluster. So one of the goals of Shipwright was to be able to sort of, with the experience we gained building OpenShift builds, taking that experience, making it outside of the OpenShift umbrella and infrastructure and platform, something that you can take to any Kubernetes cluster. And so you get a bit more portability across clouds. You can take your build config and put it on Amazon or GKE or your own bare metal hosted cluster. There are a number of other projects. There's also Kpack is one that's very specific to build packs specifically. Instead of Shipwright's model where the build strategy is pluggable, Kpack assumes build packs, but build packs is very pluggable. So you can do a lot of things inside of build packs. So yeah, I would say OpenShift build and Kpack are two similar concepts. Shipwright also has been able to take advantage of Tekton a lot. OpenShift builds does some of the sort of stuff that Tekton does, and Kpack does some of the stuff that Tekton does. But Shipwright is kind of just it is in a lot of ways a candy shell around Tekton to make Tekton really, really easy to use for this one specific use case. So Shipwright has benefited a lot from being able to just hand off a lot of responsibility to Tekton, and in that way also benefits from a lot of the features coming through the Tekton ecosystem and community and project to benefit Shipwright users. So
Yes,
yeah, I know that was, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And last day I have talked to, I think, Matt Murray. He's been spent a lot of time on the Knative project. He tell me that before the Tekton, we would think about the Knative build, and then we remove this Knative build part and open source it and call it a tektoncd. And as you mentioned, that it chip right under the hood using the Tekton. And during this time, I think when you talk about the things, what to use under the hood for the Shipwright, because you don't want to reinvent the wheel, because there are already solution available for you. Why not you pick one from the community and plug in it into the Shipwright and then do the heavy lifting? On that time, I think you have a two option like tektoncd. They are a wonderful Kubernetes way of building the CI/CD. I have talked about the tektoncd with Dan Lawrence. For everybody who's interesting in learning that, I think the link is available somewhere in the chat. You can grab the link and watch that episode as well. But I think during that time, the tektoncd and Argo workflow, these are two popular, but a kind of a similar tool. So when you think about the Shipwright, what Shipwright using under the hood, do you think about the Argo workflow, or you just think about the tektoncd?
So again, that decision was sort of made before I was a part of the project. But I can say that if we were making that decision today, I would personally, again, I'm very very biased, but I would personally choose to do that on top of Tekton. I don't personally have as much experience with Argo workflows, so I'm not going to be able to say much. But I think the positioning of the two projects is sort of Argo workflows is intended for end users only, right? Like you have a UI, we have come to Argo workflows and describe your workflow and run them. And Tekton is also that. Tekton can also be a product you use directly. And there are many UIs. OpenShift has OpenShift pipelines with a UI. There's an open source Tekton dashboard. There's many. Anyway, we can talk about all of those. But I think Tekton also has this goal of being able to be a platform for other things to build on. And so Shipwright, given the choice between Argo workflows and Tekton, I'm sure they evaluated both and thought about both. But Tekton intends to be able to be a platform for stuff to build on, I think, more than Argo workflows does. And so Tekton was a good choice for them. I wasn't part of the decision making, but I agree with their choice in retrospect.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think the community also appreciate a lot of the folks I talk about. I think they are really comfortable using tektoncd because it's been the engineering from the Google, and Google have learned a lot about the CI/CD and platforming, SRE and DevOps stuff. They know better than anybody else. I think the kind of the company they had, so I think they understand the heavy investment as well. So before I jump to on the Red Hat side, because you're the member, I'm really happy because you are the first person I can catch up with on talking about the Red Hat something, because they are an innovator of very wonderful things in the cloud native space. So before I jump into that question, what was the science behind, or what was the thinking behind the name of the tool?
Behind Shipwright?
Yes.
I'm another good question. I'm not sure what other options they came up with. I think a shipwright is a person who builds ships, is a person who constructs ships, and there are a number of good puns in the community around other ship related things. I think it took me an embarrassingly long time to realize that Shipwright was also a good pun for like ship right, ship correctly, ship your code right. It was embarrassingly long before I realized that that was such a good pun. So well done to the folks that came up with that. Um, uh, yeah. But again, before my time on the project, but I again very much heartily agree with their decision.
Yes, absolutely. Because previously I talked to Matt Murray about the name of the Knative. What is the science behind the
Mm,
Knative? And he told me there is so much of like Fluxernities they have came up. App Engine Flux came up. With Kubernetes name,
yeah.
I'm already thinking about what is Kubernetes, and they understand and know that Kubernetes is a Greek word. So I think the naming in Cloud Native is kind of a really hard, but I like the name Shipwright, literally.
You really only have two options. You can go with something that's Greek, or you can go with something that's nautical, ship related in some way. Unfortunately, those are the only two options available to you. You can't choose any other name besides those two things.
Yes, absolutely. At least the logo tell me the story of the shipwright, what it's trying to do. At least the logo
Yeah,
is giving us a lot of, because the logos of Docker is already depicting us the story what Docker is and Kubernetes. I think the shipwright is also. So I think now for the last few part we can spend time with the Red Hat things. I think Red Hat develops so many good tools in the cloud native ecosystem like Builta, and there are a bunch of other. They have a container registry, and there are so many
mhm.
stuff in there in the Red Hat. So how your time spending with your folks at the Red Hat? What is been currently developing, and what is the Red Hat community is most excited about? Which one of the tool they will really think about? This is one of the best tool we have. We come up with, and the whole journey of you are being in a part of the Red Hat team.
Yeah. So I've again only been a part of Red Hat for 9-ish months now. But it's been very welcoming and very exciting to be a part of. I think Red Hat's real strength. Well, there are a few strengths. One is like open by default, open source by default. A very good contributors and very good community members of basically anything we touch. We're going to be a core contributor as much as we can. We're going to help with the day-to-day chop wood, carry water type stuff. I really like Red Hat's reputation in that and track record in that. Red Hat's also, I think, got very, very, very deep knowledge of Linux and very deep knowledge of how these things work at a very core, deep level. And what that lets you do when you have people that you can lean on to that have that deep understanding is your users don't have to as much have that deep understanding. They can trust that Red Hat's making the right decision and putting in the same defaults, not just for Red Hat's products, but like when they contribute to something, it can be relatively well assumed that the fundamentals are there and that everybody contributing knows sort of what the layers are that are being built on top of, so that you don't have to. And I think Kubernetes is a really good example of that. Like Kubernetes is not only Linux, but mainly it is Linux, and the sort of stuff that Kubernetes is able to do and that containers are able to do are built on this foundation of really core, deep Linux and operating system understanding and knowledge and experience. And so, Red Hat has been involved since forever in Kubernetes, since before there was a Kubernetes, since before they came up with the logo and the name. So, yeah, I think it's been really exciting to see that from the inside and see how deep that commitment goes. I think another thing that Red Hat does really well is focus on security. Again, because we have such deep core understanding of all the layers underneath everything, we can present a good, shiny, polished front end to everything, and we are comfortable taking responsibility for securing and making reliable the platform underneath. So yeah, I think that's I think that was three things, but three answers to your question. But I think those are the things I've been most excited about at Red Hat so far, and
Yes, absolutely.
finding more and more examples of it every day.
Yes, absolutely. But the turn the coin, the security stuff, I think that's they are thinking about from the day one. Recently
Yeah,
acquired the Stack Rocks, the cloud native security company, and they're under the umbrella of Red Hat. Also, they have a kubelinter tool. There are so much ton of tools that give you that security, and also the builder, the way the builder construct is think about
yeah,
security from the day one, from the development machine, because it's not
yeah,
build the container images as a privilege mode, but in a user space mode. And tons of credit to the Red Hat team for thinking about at that time, because Docker is giving us the container in a very easy way. And
yeah,
they rely us to forget about security, just use containers. But under the and during the years, I think Red Hat came up with this mind to give the container, not give a user as a privilege mode, but as a user space mode. The container that can be built is more secure. So the day one, I think that Red Hat is the first company who thinking about the security stuff is really seriously. And I think
yeah,
right now that everybody is talking about security is seriously. If Dan is watching us and Matt is watching us, we are the number two person they are thinking about security and supply chain very seriously.
yeah.
And before I let you go on the shipwright thing, tell us about what is the momentum going on, what are the core set of feature coming up later down the road, and what you think is right now is missing, because some of the folks I have talked, do you think about the eventing part is missing because they want somebody hit a
Yeah.
pull request, they can build the images, not detect the event. I think that's missing. I want to I want for opinion. Is in the roadmap right now because so many people are asking about it.
Yeah. When you asked the question, what is coming up, the first thing I thought of was that. There's I think uh, obviously I even talked about it in my original example. You tell us where to look for source and where to put the image when it happens, and we will automatically do it. I fibbed a bit. We don't actually do that yet. We need to have some way to uh, automatically build when repo changes are detected. That is coming. That is on the roadmap. There was a demo from Shubik just this week about uh, doing that, relying on Tekton triggers, because again, we're not going to build that from scratch. We're just going to depend on Tekton as much as we can, and so that's absolutely on the roadmap. That's absolutely something I think we need to do. Um, the question is, as always, how to do it like most reliably and to make it easiest to set up and easiest to operate. So yeah, all of that is on the roadmap. I think there's two other things I'm really excited about on the horizon for Shipwright after eventing support and triggering support. And one is making it easier to sign these images. So you've talked with Dan, you've talked with Matt, you've talked about how important it is to verify the images that you are consuming in both in your build pipelines and in your runtime environments. And part of that is going to be when you build with Shipwright, it should be signed. You should be able to say and sign it to prove that it came through this process, that it came through this cluster, that it was kicked off by this user from this source or whatever. And so that's absolutely also on the roadmap. That actually breaks down into two issues. One is because we're built on Tekton, we can just take advantage of Tekton chains to a large degree. We can just say, if you install Tekton chains and set up Tekton chains, we can, with some work on Shipwright side, we can automatically have everything we produce signed and attested and verifiable. And then the other is having a good, that's sort of very powerful and it doesn't require any work on Shipwright side, which is very nice for me. But then there's another component to making it easier to specify in Shipwright's config, like when you produce this image, sign it using these keys. So that's also on the roadmap. That's also coming. And then a third thing I'm really excited about, we actually just started a new subproject under Shipwright for an image resource. So the idea here is that it should be possible to describe a container image in a Kubernetes resource and have it update when that image updates in your registry. So we'll have a component that points to your registry. It says, update this image resource on the cluster whenever the image in the foreign registry is changed or is pushed to. This lets you write controllers that just watch for image changes. So there are a number of controllers already that watch for image changes, but it's a bit difficult to do reliably and portably across registries. So if we have this controller that runs in the cluster that watches these registries and updates resources, now you can just use regular Kubernetes APIs to watch those resources, to update those resources, to get information about those resources. So that's a new and exciting component that's on the roadmap and on the horizon as well. One thing that I think is interesting about that is that it is intended to be to not require the use of Shipwright build. So you can just, when it's not built yet, but when it's built, you should be able to install the image controller, image resource, and not have to use build if you don't want to use build. If you want to use Tekton to build, if you want to use Kpack or regular Docker pushes, Docker whatever's to push that image, then you should be able to. So it's exciting because it's a new component that is not that it certainly will work well with build and should work well with build, but is not required to use both together. So that's and that's built on a lot of experience from, again, the OpenShift image streams concept, which, like build, is very tightly integrated inside of OpenShift and has been for years. Very popular. I think people like it a lot, but it was difficult to extract from OpenShift, and so we've sort of thought about how we could build it from scratch outside. And that's Shipwright image. If that sounds interesting to you, it is still the ground floor of that effort. There's a lot of work to do there. So we'd love input, we'd love feedback, we'd love users and people's input. But yeah, those are the three things I'm really excited about: triggering build runs, signing images that we build, and storing images or exposing images as a resource inside the cluster. I think will be a really great foundation for, Shipwright in 2022.
Yes, absolutely. These are all great news for me because I'm waiting for the eventing part for a very long time.
Yeah.
That's the wonderful news for me. Thank you very much. And next, I think Dan and Matt is absolutely happy about what if you heard about you, that in the Shipwright, you can sign the images, supply chain inside the Shipwright. And if you haven't talked about, we have a ton of stuff with Dan and Matt and somebody. There are 3 or 4 episodes in the TheCloudNativeFM. You can watch those sessions with Dan and Matt. And also the third you think about, I think it's a kind of similar to, I think, Argo CD image updater. Like it's watching the registry, and then it's take the new image come up. Then it's update the manifest, update the whole life cycle. So you don't have to think about the pipeline to insert the YAML into it, these new images, but that's already being done for you. That is third.
Yeah, I would say the component that we're building in Shipwright would let you build an image updater type thing. It's probably not going to include the image updating logic, but it's certainly a useful tool in being able to build things that react to image pushes, things that react in some way to images being updated in a registry. The most common and most powerful thing I think you would want to do with that is to be able to, roll out those changes when those happen. So that's going to be really exciting for future integrations.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's another wonderful news for me for this part, because I think this attending the whole life cycle of the Shipwright, already missing beating all in the chain. I think if I tweeted about this feature, I think most of the community is really happy about the eventing. They are looking for the eventing as well. So before I let you go, last few words. When you first heard about Docker or containers or Kubernetes, what do you think? Is it easy to learn? Is it easy for learning, or I can ignore it?
Can you ignore Kubernetes? Is that the question?
Yes, absolutely.
I think the answer is you probably cannot. It's taken over the industry. It's definitely a big shift in how we think about distributed systems. I think it can be daunting. I understand. You said when I learned about Docker, did I understand it? I still don't think I understand it. I still don't think I get it all. But all it did was take 6 years of full-time professional learning about it, and now I mostly understand it. So it is daunting. I think a lot of people are working really hard to make it less daunting and sort of paving the parts of it that most people need to care about. I think my advice to someone learning Kubernetes is don't try to read the documentation from beginning to end, because most of it is not stuff you need on day one. Most of it is not stuff you need on day 300. Focus on sort of identifying a problem, solving a problem. Get up a simple little website with it, and then make it do something else, over time, grow and learn about stuff, learn about whatever is exciting to you. If you don't care about build, you don't have to care about build. There are plenty of ways to not have to care about build. Some of them are Shipwright, some of them are Tekton, some of them are other things. But it's sort of an endless fractal of complexity if you chase every path. So don't do that. Focus on sort of what you're trying to learn and go wherever you're in.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And last final thought, if somebody is learning about Kubernetes, share some tips for those folks who haven't delved into the Kubernetes and cloud native stuff. What are the first 4 or 3 steps, or what are the few steps he could take to learn Kubernetes cloud native in an effective manner?
Yeah, I think starting small with trying to solve a specific problem, and then from there, figure out what part of that was interesting to solve, and then learn more about that area. It might be networking, it might be node management and scheduling to those nodes, it might be scaling, it might be how many pods can I fit into this cluster and what breaks first, right? Just find something and go break it and see how it broke and figure it out. Start small, start with some, get a deployment, get a service, get something that you can. It's always nice to see your work. If you can get something to respond to hello world on some domain on the actual internet, it always feels good to oh, look, you can send it to your friends and say, look, I got this running up in a real cluster somewhere. So that's always exciting. But once you get something that works, figure out what part of that was interesting to you and chase that into whatever area you end up in. And the nice thing about the Kubernetes project and the Kubernetes ecosystem and community is there are dozens of people also interested in that thing. If you chase the rabbit hole of networking and try to figure out how networking works on Kubernetes, it's a deep rabbit hole, but there are dozens of people there that are also interested in these problems and these solutions. Same with storage, same with building, same with security, and supply chain security is a huge, there's a million topics to go chase. So figure out what's interesting to you, what's exciting to you, and
yes,
you'll find other people also interested.
Absolutely. I think the wonderful tip for you giving us for other people, because I think you can't learn 14 or 15 tools in a one day, but you can follow 15 people who are chatting about different technology. Let's say you're not into the supply chain security. Today is not my field, but I literally know what is Dan talking about, what is Matt talking about. I'm not in the Shipwright, but I'm thinking, I'm following you and learning from what you are talking about. In the future, I know these are the resources for me to go through and to be able to successful. And last personal question, I think that's a tricky one for you, everyone, is let's say if you are into the college or university and doing the computer science degree, and on that time you're able to learn Kubernetes, and Kubernetes came up into part of your course syllabus. Do you effectively pass that course?
If I was in a class on Kubernetes, would I pass the class?
Yes.
I think there are units in that class that I would be able to pass pretty well, and there are units in that class that I would not do it all well in. I think I think it's a testament to Kubernetes that there are areas that I don't ever have to think about. There are whole things that it works reliably. I don't have to care about it. And I have taken my own advice and chased the areas of it that were interesting to me and exciting to me, and learned more, and learned perhaps way more than I should about those areas. But yeah, I think there are areas of Kubernetes that I know a lot about, and areas of Kubernetes that I know almost nothing about. For better or worse.
And turning the question again, let's say you are the professor and working on the university, and this course is some, let's say the HOD or the senior teacher asks you to deliver this course and talk to people so they can learn the Kubernetes. Do you take the challenge?
Probably not. I don't know if I consider myself a knowledgeable enough person to teach a class. Again, there are areas I think I could talk about at length for hours and hours and hours, whether or not anybody cares. But I think I don't think I have the. You need like both breadth and depth of the knowledge to be able to teach it to people, and I have some breadth and some depth, but no full knowledge of everything. I don't think anybody does, right? I don't think anybody about Kubernetes or computers or anything, life, nobody knows everything. So, yeah, I think I would probably turn down the teaching position on Kubernetes as a degree or whatever.
Yes, absolutely. And for the last, just describe Shipwright in just 3 or 4 words. Let's say if somebody asks 3 or 4 words, what is Shipwright and what problem you try to solve?
Shipwright, it's going to be more than 3. Build images declaratively is, I think, my 3 words.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Great description. Great description. Thank you, Jason. It's been a wonderful talking to you. Hope to catch up you again. Let me know in the YouTube channel if you like to have a hands-on experience with Shipwright, because I'm also running the Cloud Native Islamabad community. I will talk to Jason and we have a deep hands-on session with you guys as well. Let us know on the comments if you have this kind of looking for learning about the hands-on experience with Shipwright. But it's been a wonderful talking to you. Try to catch up you again. I'm following you, learning it from you on the Twitter. Every day you're talking about it. I'm seriously thinking about your chats. What are you actually talking there with the people? So it's been a wonderful talking to you. It's the first time I have a guest from Red Hat. More than more energetic, more enthusiasm in my blood, and I'm really happy for today. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe, stay happy. Have a great night.
Thank you very much. Yeah. That's it.
New to your organization, that this is just another method or tool, basically method and tooling in your repertoire. But if you are obviously someone who still like deploys manually, then this will be a change for you, I think. How do you look at it, Mike?
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. I mean, there's so many organizations that I've worked with, even like recently in the last year, where they're still like in a Windows world RDPing to a web server and then opening an ASPX file with Notepad and then pasting like a new line of code and hitting save and calling that a deployment, right? Like you can't do that. But there's tons of people out there that are still doing that. And I don't think that, if you look at the industry and you look at the marketing, it's easy to forget about that, right? It's easy to like think that everybody's just crushing it with cloud native. But that's not really what it is in the field, man. There's a lot of people that are struggling. So just basically learning, or just learning basic Git workflow is a huge step for a lot of organizations, let alone GitOps, right? So yeah, I mean, it depends on the culture now, to Thomas's point. And if you're not open to command line, right, and you're not open to writing some code, it's going to be really uncomfortable, and you're going to have a hard time getting buy-in from everybody else in the organization. So yeah, I mean, it's all rooted in DevOps, just like Thomas said, and adopt those patterns, be open to them. And, over time, once your teams are familiar with how Git works, then you can go on to GitOps and start doing that kind of stuff. And I think that it's going to be huge, man. I mean, I'd love like having a source of authority, right? Like a central place, a mono repo or whatever. It's like, all right, I know exactly what's going on with everything. It's right here. I think that's compelling.